Good morning and welcome to the second part of this video from Stockholm to Gatwick. What we're going to do this time is we're actually going to go through some of the things and the procedures that I followed in the first video. I'm going to show you how to set the 737-800 up and exactly what you need to do to fly this thing. We're only really going to take off, set it all up, take off, and that's about it for today. So let's get started. As you can see, we're at Stockholm. This is the Orbeck scenery, and it's got ultimate traffic 2 on. As you can see, it's fairly good scenery. Definitely recommend it. Love it. It's great. Okay, let's jump into the cockpit and set up. Okay, so we're running GSX at the moment, and we've just deboarded, so everything's kind of on. We're not going from cold and dark. We're running off of ground power at the moment. And I'm now going to show you how to set up the flight management computer. Okay, I'm using PFPX for the flight plan, and I'm going to take the information from there. So the first thing we need to do then is to go into FS Actions. We're going to select payload. We're going to select full for this flight. It's entirely up to you what you use. Press return, and the fuel for this trip is going to be 14,700 pounds. So we just put that in there. We line select it into the where it says total pounds. That's it, we're done there. Let's return back to the main menu. Now we're going to go into the FMC, and don't worry about this nav data out of date. The current cycle is 1604. I just haven't updated it yet, so we just clear that out of the way. Okay, so first thing we need to do is we need to go to this position initiation. So we click on this button here, and what we're going to put in here is we're going to put the reference airport. It's going to be where we are now, which is Stockholm, and the airport code for Stockholm is ESSA. Okay. So you can see we typed it there. Now we're going to line select it into the reference airport, and as you can see it gives us a position in the world, that airport. We could put the gate in, but we're not going to bother with that. Okay, so now we need to go into the route, and as you can see ESSA has already copied itself down here at the bottom of the scratch pad, and we're just going to put that line select that into origin by clicking on this first button. As you can see, it copies it into there. Now we need to put a destination in, and today we're going to Gatwick, and Gatwick's airport code is EGKK. Okay, so you can see we typed it on the scratch pad, and we press this button and it will go into there. Okay, now as I said before, we use PFPX to plan the route, and we've exported it into the PMDG flight plan, and so all we need to do to bring that up is click on this button, company route, and then we need to find today's date alongside route, and today's date is the 7th of May 16, and as you can see here I've actually put the date against it before I exported it. So it's this one here, ESSA to EGKK, 7th of May 16. Once it's highlighted, you'll see the execute button comes up. Click on the execution button and then we'll activate it and then execute again, and that's loaded the plan into the flight management computer. Okay, so we're going to give this flight number, and that's BAW for British Airways, and we're just going to call it 901. You can call it what you like, and then we line select it into there by clicking on that button. As you can see, there it is. Okay, before we go any further, what we're going to do now is we're going to click on the Depart Arrival button, and we're going to tell the flight management computer which runway we're going to depart on, and we're also going to tell it which runway we're going to be arriving on when we get to Gatwick. So first thing we need to do then is click on the Depart against Stockholm ESSA, and we're actually going to be taking off today from runway 26. You can't see it on there, so you just press the next page and 26 runway is there. Click on the right hand button and it will ask you to execute to confirm that. Do that. Now we're actually going to use a SID, which stands for Standard Instrument Departure, and we're going to use today, let me just see on my flight plan, we're actually going to use DKR2K, which is this chap here. Click on it, you can see it loads it up there, and it asks you to confirm it by executing. That's it. Okay, so that's the departure runway and SID set up. Now what we need to do next is click on this Depart Arrival button again, and we're now going to tell the computer which runway we're going to arrive on when we get to Gatwick. We'll click on Arrivals, and we're actually going to be landing on ILS 26 left today. So we line select that and again execute, and we're actually going to use a star, which stands for Standard Terminal Arrival Route, and that star is TIMB1J. Again, use the next button to scroll through, and you can see here TIMB1J is at the bottom there. Click on it and execute. So now we're telling the computer that we're going to land on 26 left. We may be vectored by air traffic control when we get to Gatwick to a different runway and be given a different star, but for now we're just going to leave it as per the flight plan. Okay, having done the arrivals, we now need to go to the bottom here and we need to click on the route. This brings us back here, and then we're going to click on the performance in it. Now you can work out your zero fuel weight here yourself, or there's a nice handy little shortcut. If you just click on the side of that, it actually loads down here what the zero fuel weight is. All you need to do then is line select that back into there, and it will bring up the gross weight, etc., zero fuel weight. It will load it all in there for you. Now standard reserve, fuel reserve, is, I always use £5,000. So we're going to tell the aircraft that we're going to have a fuel reserve of £5,000. All you need to do is type 5 in there and line select it against reserves. Okay, next thing, cost index. All airlines have different cost indexes. You can pretty much put in there what you use, and that is to do with the airline's own policy on costing the flight, the fuel, the takeoff, how much power it uses, etc, etc. For the purposes for today, we're just going to put in 40 and we're going to line select it into there. I know some of you are going to say, oh no, that's not British Airways policy, blah blah blah, but just for the purposes of this video, you know, we're just going to put that in there. Okay, the next piece of information we need to put in here is the cruise altitude. Now, on this particular flight, we are going to use 37,000. What it's saying here at the top is that the maximum flight level you should go to is 37,300. So we're just going to use 37,000. So we type that in, 37,000, and we line select it into this altitude. And it asks us to confirm that. Now what this message is saying is that we're going to be using the reserve fuel. So in other words, we're going to be, by the time we get to Gatwick, we're actually going to be below £5,000, which is our reserves, which is fine, that's not a problem. Just means the aircraft's not over-fueled for the trip. So we'll just clear that. This message here is actually saying that the flight management computer is going to be unable to attain 250 knots when we come into Gatwick at this particular waypoint. But don't worry about this for the purpose of this exercise, we just ignore that for the moment. You'll probably be vectored by ATC anyway, so that will probably become immaterial. Okay, so we've put all the information in here that we need. We're now going to go to the N1 limit. Now this is where we can derate the engines. I'm not going to explain what that is because I'm assuming that you know what that is. We can actually put a temperature in here and derate the engine so it doesn't use, the engines don't use the full power, full 26,000 pound of thrust each engine produces on takeoff. So in other words, if we did derate it, we'd use less power, so it would use less fuel. But that depends on a lot of different things, runway length, temperature, etc, etc. For the purposes of this video, we're going to leave it at the full 26,000 pounds of thrust, which you can see is selected by default. So there's nothing to do in this page unless you really want to you know, derate the engines. So we can skip to the next page, which is the takeoff page. Okay, we need to put the information in here for takeoff, and we're going to start at the top. The normal configuration flap wise for the 737-800 is 5 flaps 5. So we're going to put 5 in there, and we're going to line select it into flaps. That gives us, over on the right hand side here, our V1, VR and V2 speeds. I'll come back to those in a second. Centre of gravity. Again, you can put your own centre of gravity in there from your own plans, etc, etc. A shortcut to doing this is to once again click on that button and it actually loads it down here again, and if you want to just line select it in there, you just click on that button and it puts it back in. So now what we need to do is come across to the takeoff speeds, and we're going to click on each one of those, and as you can see it copies it across to the right hand side. Okay, now the next thing we need to do, that's all done now, but there's some information that we need to take off of this takeoff reference page, which we need to copy in somewhere else. And the first thing we need to do is we need to alter the trim. As you can see here, there's a section that says trim 4.59, and what we're going to do is we're going to come down the bottom and as you can see, this is the trim wheel, and we're actually going to set the trim by rotating it to 4.59. Now you probably can't see this, but I can actually see it. It's actually set at 4.58, which is the closest we can get to 4.59. Okay, so that's done. The next thing we need to do is we need to copy the V2 rate, V2 speed into the autopilot. So we're going to come up to the top now. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to copy this 150, which is 150 knots, into our autopilot speed here, IAS, Mac indicated airspeed, and we're going to rotate this wheel until we get to 150. Okay. Now the other thing that we can do, we can set up while we're up here, is the runway heading, and as you can see we're taking off from Stockholm on runway 26, so we can put in the 26 obviously stands for 260 degrees as the heading, so we can actually put that in now while we're up here. I'm also going to put in the altitude. Now this would normally be set to whatever ATC tell you to take off to, so it might be flight level 8,000, might be 10,000, whatever, but for the purposes of this video we're just going to set it up to our flight level, maximum flight level, which is going to be 36,000 as we set in the flight management computer. Okay, so we're done there for a moment. The next thing we need to go back and check, actually we'll just make sure that the, actually sorry, that should be 37,000, beg your pardon. I'm sure one of you might have spotted that. Okay, so there's our flight level, our maximum flight level. That's our cruise, that's our descent. Okay, that's all good. Now, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you back to the legs that we're going to be flying. So if we press this legs button, you can now see that all of the waypoints have been loaded into the computer from the company route that we selected earlier, and this gives you waypoint, and it gives you the speed at that waypoint and the altitude, and obviously this is the nautical miles, so you can see the distance between each waypoint. Now if we scroll through this by pressing next page, you can see those are all the waypoints. And what we're checking for now is we're checking for any discontinuities, or we call them discos for short, which is a break in the flight plan. And as you can see, we've got one here, and we need to fix that, otherwise when we get to Timber, which is a waypoint name, we're not going to be able to fly on. It's just the aircraft's not going to know which way to go next. So what we need to do is we need to fix that, and it's really easy to do. All you need to do is find the waypoint immediately after the disco, which is this waypoint here, which is actually the beginning of the runway at Gatwick. And if you line select that, you'll see it copies it down here. Now line select it back into this these boxes. Okay, and then it'll ask you to execute that, and that's it. You've sorted out the disco. Now, just going back to this while we're here, unable 250 knots at KKE63. If you look up, you can see KKE63. So during descent, it's basically saying to us the aircraft's not going to be able to maintain 250 knots at this particular waypoint. Chances are, like I said, you're going to be vectored by ATC, so I wouldn't worry too much about it. You can use drag, you can combat that situation by reducing speed. So, you know, for the purposes of this video, don't worry about it. So we're just going to clear that off. Now, there's another way of checking that your routes, you know, is fine. If we just press legs again, that will take us back to page 1. We need a continuous purple line on our route, and one way we can check that is if these buttons up the top here, it's on map at the moment, but if we click that round, you'll see that it goes to plan. And if I bring the draw distance down, what we can actually do here, let's just make that a bit bigger so you can see what's going on. We can actually use this feature here, step. Now that only occurs when you put it on plan. So if you're wondering where that's suddenly come from, it only appears down here in the FMC when you put it on plan. So what we can do is, if we click step, you'll see that it's basically stepping through these waypoints, these legs, and we're just making sure that there's a magenta line running all the way through to Gatwick. You can see here on this map that TC, top of climb, that's where you should be attaining 37,000 feet. If we keep stepping, you'll see it's going through all of the waypoints that are listed there. Now, there's top of descent there. Now that's where we're going to start descending the air as well. The flight management computer will start doing it, but that's the top of descent. Carry on stepping. So this is the beginning of the start, the standard terminal arrival route, and this will bring us into Gatwick. And as you can see, there's the runway at Gatwick, and this star will bring us right onto the approach reference that we need to come into 26 left, which is mentioned there. Okay, so we've established that we've got a solid magenta line running all the way through. That's a double check that you can use, so that's all fine. So we can put that away, put that back to map, and just click on legs again. Okay, so that's done. We've verified the route. All is good. Now let's set up the rest of the cockpit. Everything's done now as far as the flight management computer is concerned. What we now need to do is we now need to go around the cockpit and set up all the rest of the instrumentation. Now, first thing I'm going to show you is this section up the top here. Again, this gives you different map plan settings. You can play around with that. I'm just going to leave it on map for now. You can press all sorts of things. I'll leave you to play with that. This barrow reference is to do with minimums when you're landing, and if you just click the middle of it, reset button, you'll see that down here you can see that the barrow is set to 200. Now that's 200 feet. That's your minimums. Okay, now you can change that if you go back up to this knob and basically turn it, you can set the minimums to whatever you want to set them to, depending on the airport, etc., etc., the elevation. But we'll just we'll leave it at 200 for the purposes of this video. This button here is for your range, in and out, so you can you can look far ahead if you want to. This is your barrow reference. It's currently set to inches of mercury, which is the IN. For most normal flying, we're going to set it to HPA, which is hectopascals, and we're going to right click that, and you'll see that if you look down here at the bottom, you'll see that at the moment it's defaulting to 29.92 inches of mercury. If you right click that, it's now changed to 1013 hectopascals, which is again the pressure to do with the pressure and the weather, and it has an effect on the height settings for the for your takeoff and your landing. ATC will normally give you that they will give you that information, and you'll reset your barrow to whatever ATC give you, but it's to do with pressure in the atmosphere. Okay, now this button here in the center, press that. That's to do with traffic, and we'll come back to that in a moment. Now these buttons along here, they give lots of different information which can come up on the screen. You can sort of decide what you want, how much information you want to put on there. I normally have data on there, the airports and the weather. But again, play around with it. It's entirely up to you what you want to put on there. Okay, so we've finished there. What we're going to do now is, just as a degree of realism, we're going to go up to the add-ons. We're going to call up GSX, and we have to actually mess around with this menu to see the bottom half of it. We're going to request boarding. Okay, so we're going to see a few trucks turn up, and people are going to get in, etc., etc., and everyone's going to, the ground services are going to start chucking bags in the hold, etc., while we're setting up here. Okay, let's go through some other checks now. What we need to do next is we need to go through and make sure that we go through some tests. First thing we're going to look at is this fire control down here, and we're going to check that the fire system is working. This button down here, if you click it, you'll see that the test is fully. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to check that these systems up here are working properly. Now, some of you may not have noticed, but down here there's a button, and if you keep your finger pressed on it, it will start self-test of the aircraft's call-outs and warnings. As you can see, it's going through there now for us.
Terrain, pull up. Sink rate. Pull up. Terrain, pull up. Don't sink. Too low.
Okay, you can hear in the background that passengers are getting on and taking their seats, etc. Standard GSX stuff. While that's going on and this self-test is working, you can see up here there's some more tests. You can test to make sure that all of these lights are working properly. You can also test the autopilot disengage functions working properly.
Wind shear.
Good morning.
Wind shear.
Thank you.
Wind shear. Too low. Terrain. Caution. Terrain. 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 Pull up.
Okay, so that's finished testing for us. Another thing you can do as well, by the way, is if you use the shift and enter button, you can actually move the cockpit down slightly. I'll show you what I mean. That sometimes helps you to get a better view from the aircraft, etc. And you just use the backspace button to bring it back up again. Okay. What we're going to do now is we're going to go to the overhead panel and we're going to start looking at bits and pieces on that. Okay, now everything's off at the moment, so we need to run through and start putting bits and pieces on. Normally I start from the left hand side and work my way up. Just going to check actually, we've got fuel in the centre. No, we haven't. Right, we've only got fuel in the wings for this flight, and as you can see, the fuel pumps are all switched off, low pressure warnings. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to switch those on. Okay, and GSX has just told us that boarding is complete. In fact, to stop that noise, I'm just going to go back down and close the doors. Okay, right, that's the doors shut. Alright, let's continue here. As you can see, I've turned on the fuel pumps. We're now going to, we should have actually put this on earlier, the seat belts. Those on now. And we're going to turn on the hydraulic pumps. Like so. Now, I'm not going to do anything else up here for a moment. Just going to follow procedures. But one thing that we're going to do is we're going to set the pressurization for the cabin. And this square control here is cabin pressurization. And all you need to do here really is you need to put this, this is standard, it's set at 10,000, put it up to our cruising altitude, which is 37,000. Important that you do this, otherwise your passengers are going to feel rather ill. The landing altitude, I normally just set it to 0, but it largely depends on where you are in the world and the airport elevation. But again, for this tutorial we'll just set it as we've got there. The next thing we're going to look at is the PAX, is the bleed air system. Which is this panel here. Now at the moment you can see that it's actually set up ready to start the aircraft. the recycling fans are switched off. The left pack and the right pack are both switched off. And at the moment, all we've got on here is the auxiliary power unit bleed, which we're going to need that in that configuration to start the engines. So what you see there is what you should have prior to engine start. Don't worry about these low pressure warnings, they'll disappear once the engines are started. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to start the auxiliary power unit so we can come off of the ground power. We're going to need the APU, which is a small jet built into the rear tail. We're going to need that running so that we can start the engines. So this is the following this is the procedure that you need to follow. As a footnote, you must have the pump 1 where it says aft on the left hand side. That's the fuel pump that also runs the auxiliary power unit. So essentially you must have that on before you start the APU. But as we've switched all 4 pumps on, it's not going to be a problem. Okay, so how do we start the APU? All we do simply is this lever down the bottom, we just click start. And what's going to happen now is you're going to see this dial here, you're going to see, which is the exhaust gas temperature dial. The low pressure warning comes on first, and you're going to see this dial come up to, I don't know, about 8 or 9, and then it will settle back down. There it goes. And that essentially is the APU, that small jet built into the rear of the tail, starting up, and as I say, we're going to need that to start the engines. Now just above this, you're going to see a light come on, which is there you go, APU generator off bus. Now what we're going to do here is, at the moment, these 2 generator off buses are bringing power from the ground power unit. And now what we're going to do is we're going to switch between ground power and APU power with these 2 buttons here. So what we need to do is click each one of those, and now the aircraft is running the electrical system through the auxiliary power unit. So essentially the ground power now is redundant, and we can switch that off in a moment. Okay, so the next thing we need to do then is we are going to actually come back down to the cockpit. And we're going to finish setting up the autopilot settings. So what we need to do first of all is there's a little switch here, which is the flight director. There's 2. There's one for the first officer and there's one for the captain. The captain's one must be switched on first. Whichever one of these is switched on first will be the master. So, but as a rule of thumb, always switch on the captain's one first. And as you can see above it, you'll see this little light come on, MA Master. Now we switch on the flight directors. You must switch both of them on. and that's the flight director's now operating. Next thing we're going to do is the auto throttle. This switch here, that needs to be switched on, and it's entirely up to you whether you arm the VNAV, vertical navigation, and the lateral navigation on the ground. Sometimes it will arm, sometimes it won't, but if you click it, you'll see that we've managed to arm those. When you're doing the takeoff roll, sometimes they'll not engage until you get to a certain height, and to engage the full autopilot, you've got the command buttons over on the left here. You press that left button, but you need to be 1,000 feet at least before these things will start to engage. Okay, so we've set up the autopilot there. If we come down here, you'll see this is the auto brake, and what we need to do for takeoff is we need to turn it the other way to RTO, which stands for rejected takeoff. If there's a problem on takeoff and something goes wrong, it will aid us in braking, so that needs to be set to RTO. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the ground connections. Just hit that. Unfortunately, it takes the brake off at the same time, so we'll just put that back on. I didn't actually show you, I shortcutted that, but the actual parking brake is here, it's this lever. So, as you can see, okay, just looking quickly at the pedestals, I'm not going to go into this in too much detail. Essentially, you've got your radios here. This I speak to ATC on these frequencies, and this here is for your radio navigation. We'll use those to dial in the frequency for the ILS. That's basically the nav radio here. Down the bottom here, this panel here is where you set your squawk code. So ATC will assign you a squawk code, and you'll use these buttons here. If they give you, let's say, you can move that one there, 3, 4, 5, 3. Let's assume that's your squawk code, and then what you do is you just press that little button there, and that is your squawk code set, your identifier for your aircraft. Now, another thing that we're going to do, we don't actually, I'm not quite sure when we're supposed to put it on, but I'm sure one of you are going to tell me. This is your TCAS here, and what we need to do is sorry, I'm moving a bit there. We're going to move this button over to TRAR, and we're going to click the test button here. And what that's doing, it's the computer's doing a self-diagnostic.
Test pass.
Okay, and that's fine. It's passed. And this, as you can see on this screen here, let me just bring it down slightly. you can now see that because we've got Ultimate Traffic 2 on, these are aircraft that are showing up on the TCAS, and what this plus 7171 is and plus 99, that's the altitude from you. So at the moment that aircraft there is 7,400 feet above you. It looks like it's climbing. This one's at 9,900 feet, so is this one. So you can see that the TCAS system works very well, and it shows up aircraft on the screen there. Okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to go back to our GSX menu, because we're basically ready for pushback now. I'm going to show you how that works in GSX, and also show you how to start the main engines. So we're going to go to our add-on menu, select GSX menu, and you can see down here there's number 5, prepare for pushback and departure. Now when you press that, it asks you which way round you want the aircraft to face. We're actually going to put the nose to the left, tail to the right. You can go straight back, you can go in the opposite direction, but as we're going from 2.6 today, we're going to put the nose left and the tail right. Next question, do you want to start the engines before pushback? No, we're not going to do that. You can do if you like, but to be quite honest with you, engines are normally started during pushback, so we're going to say no. Now you can see that our little truck is coming out to push us back. No, I didn't like the fact that I didn't have that brake.
Hello, Captain. We are ready for pushback. Locking gear.
What we're going to do at this point is, and I should have done it earlier, is we should have put on the nav beacon. So let's quickly just go up there and show you that.
Departure check completed. Wipe has been inserted. Release parking brakes.
Okay, so what we should have done is, prior to starting the APU, we should have put the anti-collision light on.
Release parking brakes.
And we can put the logo on, which is just basically on the tail. And the strobe and ready, we're going to put down onto steady.
Release parking brakes.
And he wants us to release the parking brakes, so we're going to go ahead and do that.
Release parking brakes. Commencing push. All engines clear. Start that wheel.
Okay, so we're now free to start the engines. How do we do that? Quite simple. Above you, we've got these two starter knobs here. All you do is click this switch over to the right hand side and then toggle the switch to the left, and you'll see below the N2 is beginning to run up. When it gets to 25, you'll then cut the fuel in. Okay, there's 25, and the fuel lever is there, and you'll see now that the engine should start spooling up. If you look here, you can can see that the engine's beginning to, the end one's beginning to turn the engine up. Start valves open, and we've got one engine starting.
Set parking brakes.
Okay, you can see now that the switch that we used to start the right-hand engine, the starboard engine, has now gone from ground to off. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start the port engine. Again, exactly the same
Unlocking gear.
the ignition over to the left-hand side. You can leave it in the middle actually, but I just
Tow truck disconnected. Bypass main removed.
and then we're going to toggle that switch to ground, and the second engine, the port engine, will start. There you are. That's the N2. It's spooling up again. When it gets to 25, you can cut the fuel in.
Left is clear. Right is clear.
And as you can see, the port engine is now, or engine 1 is now beginning to spool up. Start valves open, and we're essentially we've got two engines started. Okay, there's a number of things that we need to do now before we taxi off for our flight, and this involves the overhead panel. So we're going to go up to the overhead now. Okay, well what we're going to do is we're going to go up each one of these panels, checking to make sure we've got everything set. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on the yaw damper. Now this yaw damper can only be switched on once the engines are started. No, actually we're gonna ignore me. We're gonna go back to the bus train, the electrical power, for a moment. Okay, at the moment the electrical system is still running from the auxiliary power unit. Once the engines are started, we can now draw the electrical power from the generators on each engine and switch the APU off. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to put the power back off to the engines. And the way we do that is basically we reverse this. We click both of those two buttons, and as you can see, the lights go out. So now the electrical power is being brought from the engines. We can actually switch this APU off at the bottom here. That's going to save us fuel. Okay, so that's all done. Okay, let's go back up to the yaw damper. Okay, as I said, the yaw damper can only be switched on once the power has been transferred, the engines are running. You can then switch that on and you'll see that the light will go out. Okay. Okay, everything seems to be fine in this column now. We're now going to come up to the top here. Right, we need to switch the window heat and probe heats on. They are only operated once the engines are running. switch those on, and the probe heat, they can all go on. Okay, the next thing, we need to switch the recycling fans on from the bleed air. What we're going to do is, first of all, we're going to turn the APU bleed off now, because we've finished with that. We only used it to start the auxiliary power unit. That's now switched off, so we can switch it off as well. Recycling fans, all you need to do, click them down to auto, and you'll start hearing the air pressure, duct pressure starts to come on, and the pressurization of the cabin starts, you can see up here. Okay, so this configuration is what you're going to need for flight. If you don't switch it on, your poor passengers are not going to be able to breathe. Okay, let's come back down to the bottom. Now, these two switches here, if you remember, we used those to start the engine, to turn the N2 blade, the outer blade of the jet, and we switched them to ground. Once they started, they switched themselves back to off. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to put that switch in the middle, the ignition switch, back to both. We're now going to turn these to continuous. Now the reason for that is below 10,000 feet we need the ignitions on continuous in case of an engine out or a bird strike. Leaving them in that configuration will help us to quickly restart the engines if it's possible. Once we get above 10,000 feet, then they will go back to off. And again, once we start landing, we get down to 10,000 feet, they need to be switched to continuous as part of the procedure. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to come down to the runway lights. We're going to switch our taxi light on and our left and right runway turn off lights. Okay, so that's pretty much it. There's a stall warning up the top here that we can press, and we can also up here test the flaps and flight controls on the wings. They all seem to work okay. They're all yellow, so that's fine. Yep, that's fine. I think we've finished with the overhead. Obviously, if there was an ice situation, then you could switch the wing and anti-ice on. I'll show you where that is. It's right here, as you can see. So, yeah, if it was below a certain temperature, you'd operate those. Okay, so we're back down here now. The next very important thing to do is to set our flaps to 5 degrees before we taxi, and we can see our flap lever here. And we're going to give that 3 clicks, and if we look up the top here, we can see the flaps are moving. Sorry about that, very temperamental. Okay, so this dial here shows your flap settings, and as you can see, 3 clicks gives us 5 degrees of flap. The next thing I normally do there's a button just here. If you click that twice, actually once, it minimises all the aircraft information, and there's a button right here. This gives you the tyre pressures and your elevator movements and ailerons, etc. And I'm going to demonstrate that now, because we're going to test to make sure that our control surfaces will work. And if I actually turn the yoke to the left, you can see down the bottom there that the dials all move. So when I move this, you can see all this stuff moving here. Turn it to the right. Yep, free movement now. We pull back on the yoke, forward on the yoke, and if you look down on the floor, down the bottom here, you can see the rudders. Check for free movement on those. Yep, that's fine. Okay, so that's essentially what this does here. You can switch it off, you don't have to have the information there, you can just leave it as it was. Okay, so we're pretty much ready to taxi out. Everything seems to be set up. I'll just have a final look around outside, and then we'll move off to the runway. I just thought I'd actually explain that obviously I'm using Prepar3D 3.2 here, and yeah, it works pretty well. I'll put my specs at the bottom of this video for you to see, and as you know, as I mentioned before, Ultimate Traffic 2. Using that at the moment. As you can see, it's pretty good. The only problem is it does it's not very good on your frame rate unless you've got a much higher system. I mean, I'm running 16 gigabytes with an i7 processor, but even so, 2-hour flight, if you max out UT2 traffic, then you're going to fall over. Now I'm going to go a little bit faster on the taxi, because otherwise you guys are going to get bored stiff watching me taxi out here. So just for the purposes of this video, I'm going to kind of put my foot down a bit. I'm actually using, by the way, a Satec X52 stick and throttle quadrant here. Takes a bit of getting used to, but it's a fantastic joystick. It's very smooth. Obviously it does take practice to taxi on these yellow lines. I'm sure all of you are saying, thinking the same as me at the moment, you can't keep to the lines there, which I can't. Okay, so we're using a lot of Orbex products here. We're using the new Arlander scenery and HD trees. Also, I use OpenLC. Well, just about anything that you can think of Orbex produce, I use. And I must admit, I love UK 2000 air pools, but the Orbex stuff, I mean, they've made an excellent job of this, and I can highly recommend that you go straight out and purchase this ESSA. Obviously I'm using ASN for my weather, BFPX for my planning, and this video is recorded using Fraps. Okay, obviously if there's any questions you want answered, please subscribe to the channel and ask away. I know this isn't perfect. Some people are going to like it, some people are going to hate it. Perhaps I've waffled on a bit, but I'm hoping that you would have found this video useful, and it will help some of you to understand the PMDG 737 NGX. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this aircraft off, show you how to do that, and then I'm going to finish the video, and again, hopefully it's helped you all out. Okay, I'm going to stop right here, and I've got to check and make sure there's nothing coming. Okay, the next thing we need to do before we take off is obviously we need to put our lights on. These of course are our landing lights, and if you click this bar above, it'll put all of them on for you. Okay, let's tell the flight crew that we're about to take off, and let's taxi into position, ready for takeoff. One other thing that we need to do on the lights, is move the position strobe up to strobe and steady. That's the flashing strobe light on the aircraft, and that's set before takeoff, not before, otherwise it blinds everyone, especially at night. Okay, I'm going to taxi into position now, and we'll start our takeoff roll. Okay, now there's a couple of things here. You can either move the throttles manually yourself, or you can press the toga button on the end of the throttles here, or you can use the little cheat which is just below here. If I move my cursor over it just about here, you'll see the cursor change. If you click there, the toga button it's a shortcut for the toga button, which is to go around speed, which I use to take off. Again, you know, you could use the throttles, whatever you're happy doing. I'm quite happy to do it this way. Okay, here we go then. So I'm going to use the shortcut button, and the aircraft engines will start to throttle up. Try and maintain a straight line. I haven't had a drink this morning, so yep, there we go. And we want to lift off when our co-pilot says rotate.
V1.
V1.
Rotate. V2.
Okay, so we've lifted off. We've got a positive rate, so we're now going to do gear up. Everything happens quickly, and for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to shove the autopilot on now by pressing this button over here. You can see our VNAV and RNAV are both on. So now the aircraft is completely controlling itself. Look at all that lovely scenery out there, isn't it wonderful? Yeah, so things happen really quickly in the cockpit. So the next thing we need to do is we need to look over here, and you can see the flaps need to come back up. Where it says 1, it's flap setting 1, and then down here it's saying up. When it gets to up, your flaps should be up. And here we are, move the flaps, and our flaps are now fully retracted. And if you look at this little dial again, you can see that it's retracted. Next thing we're going to do is the undercarriage, which is here, which is at the moment is up. In order to relax the pressure on the undercarriage, we move it down to a central position, and that helps the hydraulics. Our little rejected takeoff button here, that can go back to off, and as you can see the aircraft is now flying itself. We're climbing and it's going to do a left hand turn now. A nice look out the window at all the scenery. I'm sure that black bit is down there, perhaps we've had an oil leak. As you can see the clouds all look good. Yeah, wonderful. It's all looking good. Love the shadows in P3D. I think they're wonderful. Great stuff. Again, you need to play around, guys. Ultimate Traffic 2 is great. You know, again, you look on the map, you can see all the aircraft moving about, but it does have a hit on the Avast. I actually flew to Gatwick with everything on the other day and run out of virtual memory just before I landed. But perhaps a good thing to do is, or a recommended thing would be to switch off Ultimate Traffic 2 while you're flying. If you got to the add-ons, Ultimate Traffic 2, you can stop the traffic there. Okay, coming above 10,000 feet now, so we can turn our lights off. Actually should have turned the runway lights and taxi lights off earlier, but too busy talking. I was talking about earlier the engine starters. Now we're above 10,000, they can go back to off, and we can essentially tell the attendants that they can get up and start bringing out coffee in. Okay, I think that's really it. I mean, the flight's going to obviously go on, and we're going to go up, and we're going to land at Gatwick perfectly. Everything looks good. The aircraft is flying itself nicely. That's pretty much it. Okay, well, I'm going to finish this video here. Thanks for watching. Again, if there's anything I've missed, please comment, subscribe to the channel. I hope you found it interesting, and I hope you've understood a few bits and pieces. Again, not a real world pilot, not perfect. I make these videos to try and help you guys out. Yeah, bear that in mind. And thanks for watching.